you do. I know you do. We mentioned it yesterday. We made light comment of it. You remember that time when just before, a couple of weeks before back to school night, when your mom or your dad or your uncle or your godparents, whoever it might have been, maybe an older sibling, took you to Kroger, took you to Target, took you to Kmart, took you to Walmart, whatever it might be, buy a couple of folders, your art box, the big rubber eraser thing that you can still smell. Maybe as you got a little bit older, a protractor or a compass that theoretically neither one of them you ever used, but they sat in your art box. A plastic ruler, a couple of pencils when you got older, some Bic pens. That first day of school, getting off the school bus with the excitement and anticipation of finding out who your teacher was going to be, who was in your class, what your schedule was, and whether you had lunch in the early days. Let me ask you this, Eddie. When you were at Decatur Central, how did they do lunches? How many periods were lunch?
We had 3 different lunches. And so there was one that was prior to 5th period, there was one that was in the middle of 5th period, and then there was one that was after 5th period.
Okay, so we had at North Central periods 4, 5, 6, 7, and I think even 8 were all half periods. So you could have lunch like 4, 6. I mean, you could have a class 4, 6 with lunch 5, or a class 5, 7 with lunch 6, that kind of thing. And if you got 4th period lunch, you ate. This is insane to me in hindsight. If you got 4th period lunch when I was in high school, you ate at 10:20 you ate lunch at 10:20. I mean, you didn't get out of school until 3. By 3 o'clock, literally, you were ready to eat like a horse and a Hostess Twinkie the size of a house, right? And, of course, for lunch, you'd always just eat like honey buns and a French fry anyway, and then you'd fall asleep during study hour with a sugar crash. But I digress. Bottom line, you remember, if you're going to elementary school in particular, that feeling of the first day of school, having your outfit picked out, all of the things that go into it. And I know that I had a pretty idyllic childhood, and I'm fortunate for that. It's my hope that a lot of people had a similar type experience or recollection. But that's where we are now for the Indianapolis Colts in the 2025-2026 season. I guess in football terms, you list it strictly by the year of the vast majority of the season. So the 2025 Indianapolis Colts right now, they're all sitting at the lunch table. They're all sitting around, and they're figuring out who's in whose class. And, that's okay, you're also a cornerback. We're sitting in the same spot, the same meetings. And the storylines begin. Zaire Franklin, for example, showing up at camp and giving an update on the status of his ankle that he had surgery in the offseason, says that he will miss the first start of camp, but he will be, quote, turned up on the sidelines and then ready to go when it matters most. The quarterback position will be that of the biggest intrigue, it goes without saying. And even though right now, think back again to when you were in school, when you were a little kid before school began and you had that Etch-a-Sketch and you'd been working on a design, and then like one of you, the little left wheel got stuck, and so you couldn't get the little thing to move, so you decided to start all over again, and you shook that thing, cleared it all off, and that's allegedly and apparently where the quarterback competition sits right now. Anthony Richardson missed their last get-together, had a little bit of a sore shoulder, called Nolan Ryan, took a couple Advil, and called it a day. And now apparently is 100% pain-free and ready to go. Daniel Jones, who's been driving the bus in the last couple of weeks, now knows that it is open competition. And that's certainly going to be the storyline that drives us. No question about that. I personally think, and none of us know, my personal thought is that this open competition has already been decided. I know that sounds crazy, but that sounds a little ludicrous because let's be real. If Anthony Richardson comes out and shows that he has to do the little things. Let me give you one of my bad analogies. Cue up the Jake Query bad analogy sounder, okay? And I can't remember who it was the other day that said that sometimes on my analogies, thank you, that I need to land the plane. I go too long. Several years ago, during a qualifying session for IndyCar, I noticed that late in the qualifying rounds, and for those that don't know, for qualifying in IndyCar, you have 3 rounds of qualifying. The first half of the field goes out, and there are 12 cars, and the fastest 6 of those 12 advance into the next round. And then the second group goes out of 12, and the fastest 6 of that advance to the next round. Then you have 12 cars in the next round. The fastest 6 of that advance, etc. And those timed sessions, I noticed that Alexander Rossi, in particular when he was with Andretti Autosport, in a 10-minute session, Rossi would be completely out to lunch for the first 2.5 minutes. Then from minutes 2.5 to 5, his times started showing a little bit more competitive. And then in the last 2 laps of a qualifying session, he would absolutely put one together and be great. And he later told me that he was working from the outside in. I'll explain what all of that means, but beforehand, Eddie, I believe we have, do we not? Chris Ballard, who is the general manager of the Colts, is talking right now. He is dealing with the media, talking to the media, answering questions at the start of camp. So I'll get back to what that meant with Rossi, but first, we didn't think we were going to have it, but we do. Here is Chris Ballard talking to media now from Grand Park in Westfield.
Opportunities in training camp to be able to give them an up-close, personal look into our team, I think is valuable. There's something different about human interaction, face-to-face human interaction. That is, it drives me nuts because, I understand the value of social media, but there's no real human connection. And I truly believe that's what is one of the great aspects of training camp for our fans. And it's a great place for us to get ready to play and get ready for the season. We always are flooded with calls from other teams that want to come scrimmage us because of this setup. It's so good, and they enjoy coming. We got Green Bay coming in here this year, so that'll be a good, time for our fans to see not only our team but also Green Bay. I haven't talked about Jim, Mr. Irsay, and our loss, and I think it's appropriate, especially our relationship. I care deeply about him, and it's going to be a big loss, not only for the Indianapolis Colts, but for the National Football League. He was unique. He cared about the game. He cared about the game of football. And he'd always tell me, Chris, we take care of the game, and the game will take care of everything else. And he was right. He was charismatic. He was very quirky and unique, as you all know. He loved the city of Indianapolis. He loved this city. He's very prideful in this city. He's prideful in the horseshoe. And it's a big loss, not only for the organization, but I'm telling you, for the league. His experience, I don't think this gets stated enough. The history of the league, he cared about it. He cared about the history of the league. And he's one of the originators, when the CBA came into place, he was one of the, I can't remember what, Peter Rucco, who's, retired a couple years ago, but is a brilliant man and was close with Jim and was part of the, CBA process whenever they wrote the original CBA. And I know Bill Polian was a part of that. And I think there was 9 or 10 people total. But I think sometimes forget, you see where the NFL is today, all right, as a league and how big it is. But you forget the owners back in the, mid-'70s and early 80s, man. It was tough sledding, man. They had to struggle. And I think it gave him a great appreciation for, where we are now and the growth, but also the history. He never wanted to lose that. He never wanted to lose the history of the league. I think that's why his relationship with players was so special. He cared about them all, and people have no idea. You have no idea how giving a man he was. I mean, look, we're all flawed. We all have our demons. But man, he had as giving a soul as anybody I'd ever been around. So I feel very fortunate to have worked, for him, and he hired me, and always grateful. I mean, extremely grateful. And then, going forward, I mean, I think he passed on to his daughters that same sense of community, to cherish the history of the game and to carry that forward. And I think all three of them are going to be outstanding. I do. I've been around them all a bunch. Carly and Kaylin a little bit more because they're more, they're around more, but they're going to be outstanding. They're going to be outstanding owners. So now onto our team. All right, going forward, I'm still getting all the medical. As of right now, nobody on PUP. All right, so Anthony is good to go. He's been throwing for about 3 weeks now. He's really upped his volume. First couple weeks will probably limit some volume, but no real restrictions other than volume restrictions, and that's something we'll keep. We have a 4-day stretch where we're practicing 4 days in a row. So this first week you could see in day 2 or 3 a little bit of volume. We reduce his volume, but other than that, good to go. We feel good about where he's at. He's in great shape, and he's ready to hit it and move forward. I know y'all probably talked to Zaire. He's in a good place. He's not quite there yet. We will not put him on PUP because we think he's going to be ready pretty quickly. I've watched him work out, and I think he'll be ready sooner than later. Jalen, JC will be ready. I've watched him work out a bunch. He's cleared and ready to go. And same thing with Samson. Samson is cleared and ready to go. There'll be a little volume with Samson working him back in. But he's cleared and ready to hit it. All right. Questions?
Chris, optimally, when do you want to know who your quarterback is going to be? Do you have to wait late in the preseason? Or?
I think when Shane and the staff and I and our staff feels like, there's a sure starter, then we'll move forward to that. Timeline, I can't put one on it.
What's the plan? Shane can speak to this, but what's the plan in terms of how you get a good look at both of them and how you split the reps?
I think everything I think it starts now. I mean, look, OTAs is that's important, but there's not any pads on. All right. So, now that we're getting the pads and the work, I've always viewed OTAs as a developmental aspect of our game, which we're losing a little bit, but that's a teaching and learning and developmental time. This is when we crank up. So everything will be evaluated from practices to any kind of scrimmages we do, preseason games, all of that will be evaluated.
Chris Ballard talking out at Grand Park in Westfield. This audio courtesy of our friends at Wish TV as he talks to the media for the report day for Colts.
Is the conversation going forward with Anthony just related to volume? I know he had the aggravation. They said I think Shane said he was overuse or stress. Is that a conversation you all have about how to monitor him going forward just in general, considering his shoulder?
Yeah, and some things he's doing strength-wise and the volume of throws each and every week, which, we track, and, sometimes it gets a little out of whack. So we just got to make sure we're on top of it.
You feel like Anthony's got to make up anything for what he missed in the spring?
He didn't miss enough. What did he miss? 3 or 4 days? It wasn't like it was the whole off season. And I'm proud of Anthony. I mean, his mindset, he didn't, it's tough when you get hurt. Anytime you get hurt, you feel like you're letting somebody down, like a player, and it's different in the OTAs, but during the season, but when you get hurt, it's a tough deal on him mentally, and I'm proud of him. He worked through it. He went to work. He's in great shape. So, no, I don't think it'll affect him.
Chris, there's a lot of things players can work on, footwork, whatever technique. With injuries, I mean, with him, can you just sort of not worry about it? You just let him play and
God's plan. I mean, I wish I could control injuries. If we could, I would get out of this and go start a business doing that. Because you'd make a lot of money doing it. No, I mean, look. Sometimes things happen. Guys get hurt. You wish it wouldn't happen, but It does, and you move forward no matter what.
What have been your big takeaways just being around Daniel Jones for a short period of time?
Good dude, really good guy. Centered. He's been through a lot. Daniel's been like he's seen, and being in New York and the scrutiny on being a top 10 pick is not for everybody. But I thought he handled it with grace and class, like you would expect, and that's who he is. And Daniel's talented. I mean, Daniel's a very talented player, so it'll be a fun competition to watch between these two guys. They're both very talented.
You preach competition a lot with that position, but there is a challenge to having two different quarterbacks kind of interchangeably with the offense. So, I guess, are you confident that your skill players are ready now to handle that? And does that, I guess, will that factor in at all to wanting to get an answer earlier rather than later?
No, I think they can't handle it. I mean, it's a veteran, even though they're young, they've all played a ton, and they've taken throws from both of them. So, no, their job is to get open and catch the football. So no, I don't see us pressing the timeline because of that.
Chris, you talk about being injured is mentally tough. It's also got to be hard mentally on the player.
Yep.
High draft pick. Have a guy brought in to compete with him. What are you seeing from Anthony that tells you that he's going to be okay with that aspect?
It was, I mean, like when you're young and like sometimes when you get hurt, you kind of, it's easy to go into a shell. But he was, I mean, his mindset stayed very positive. I think once he heard from Dr. Elatrosh and our doctors that it wasn't a major concern going forward and that this was going to heal in a short amount of time, I think that eased his mind, which it would do anybody. But no, I'm proud of Anthony. He's growing. He's still young, but he's growing. I told you all this before, but unfortunately, growth does not happen through success. Growth happens through, you have to go through a lot of shit. And, a lot of times people don't have success because they don't want to go through it. Sometimes you got to go through it.
Chris, flipping to defense, Buck said today that last year's defense was the worst that you've been a part of being in Indy. So now that you brought in Lou, what changes do you expect to see from that side of the ball, and how much pressure is there to perform this season?
Well, I mean, look, all of us, and Buck's right, and look, Gus Bradley and that staff, those are good football coaches. Let me preface that. Those guys are really good football coaches, and all of us have our name on it. Like me, coaches, players, everybody has their name on it. I think, Lou's a little different. You're going to see some schematic change, probably a little more diversity within the scheme. But look, at the end of the day, this game is not hard. Like blocking and tackling and don't turn it over, usually you can track those things to wins. All right, we've got to be a better tackling team. Hopefully I've helped them, and my staff and I have helped them by giving them, more players to create a little more competition. But we've got to be a better tackling defense, without question. And, hopefully we've added the pieces to help that.
You talked about the competition aspect of it right after the season. I think you can probably make a case that across the board, every unit has some level of competition. And did it hit the level that you hoped to accomplish back in January?
I think so. I think we've got of course there's a few jobs that with great players that they're going to play no matter, they're great players. And so I don't worry about them, but to watch, Tanner and Bortolini, compete, Jalen Travis and Freeland. I think Travis has got a really good ceiling to what he's going to become in our league. And Freeland has gotten stronger and bigger and stronger, which has been really encouraging. On the underscore, we think Neville Gallimore is going to really help us. He had a really good offseason. He's a really good dude. And we think he's going to add some real needed interior depth. But with the addition of Tim Smith and then Tommy. Tommy had a great offseason. So this is going into year 3 and a big year for him. So I think you can point to a lot of different spots. Corner, with Wally, Juju, and Jones. That's going to be a good one to watch. And let me tell you, I mean, Wally is competitive now. He's a little pit bull, and it's fun to watch those type of competitions take place. I think at linebacker, we're going to have really good competition. A lot of unknown names. That's okay. Nobody knew who Zaire Franklin was. Nobody knew who Darius. Hell, we drafted Darius with a 36 pick, and y'all didn't know who he was. So, like, they got to make their own name by their play. Okay. So I think we've got good competition across the board.
Chris, you have high expectations every year, obviously, each individual year, but when you have a string of playoff misses, I mean, the message from your players this morning was like, this has to end.
Yeah.
How do you see it? And is there additional pressure because it's been a few years?
I mean, I'm not. Excuse that. It didn't come out. I promise it didn't. It didn't. It did not come out. It almost did. It was just the F part. The UCK did not come out. Yeah, it sucks, man. I mean, first time in my career I've ever gone 4 years without making. I mean, no, it's a bothersome thing, especially with the expectations we have here in Indy. I mean, that's the one thing with Jim that I always appreciated, man. Like he didn't want to be average. He wants to be great, and that's Carly and I mean, look, we spent a lot of time together because she's around us so much. But I mean, she always said, "Look, I don't want to be good. I want to be great." And that's always the goal going in. And 22 was 22. The 23 season, last game of the year, we're right there. And even last year at the end, we didn't play as good as I thought we should have, but we were still kind of in the mix. And then you go back to 21. And we're in the driver's seat, and we piss it down our legs. We have got to finish better. Like that, at the end of the day, we have to finish the seasons better because we've had some really good football teams that just haven't got it done.
Chris, Hit kind of echoed that, saying that there's a little bit of optimism knowing that they were so close last season despite playing poorly. How close do you think this group is to getting back to the postseason?
I don't know. I mean, it starts, look, we're kind of, I think we've got a good football team. How good we become will play out over time. Like, we got to go to work. I mean, it's always about there's not a magic pill that you can take. There's nothing, there's not a magic wand. You got to go to work. The one thing you love about the NFL is you got to earn the right to win. And it takes a lot of hard work and takes a group being connected and coming together. That's what's great about training camp. So kind of day by day, we'll go to work and we'll see if we can reach what we think we can be.
Chris, is there any added pressure at all when there is a shift in ownership, or does it feel the same as it's been every year?
Pressure. I mean, people talk about pressure. Pressure. First, the change in ownership, no. That they understand what Jim wanted, and I think they'll do things differently, but they'll do things their way, but also with their father on their minds. I think the whole time. And then when you talk about pressure, I mean, like we get to play football for a living. To me, it's all for me in general. Like, it's always about the journey. Like, the journey is the reward, okay? The good and the bad. Like, at the end, like when you roll up at the end of your life and you look back, it's not going to all be roses, okay? But to be able to do what I do and what we're able to do is play football every day. I don't ever take that for granted. That's not pressure in my mind. That's being blessed. Pressure is the family that is living week to week on paycheck trying to feed their kids. That's pressure. This is entertainment. And I have been blessed my entire career to be able to do something I love and I'm passionate about. And I will never one day take that for granted. Even the shit I have to sit up here and take sometimes. It's okay because I could be doing something else that I didn't love. Contracts. I mean, I won't talk about that, but he's a really good player, and we think a lot of him.
So I know perhaps a different word, pressure, Carly was saying, she said that, you know, you and Shane, they know they haven't been good enough, or we have to fix this. So when you hear her say that, I guess, how do you feel about it?
No different than I feel about anything. Like, I don't know if y'all realize the amount of like scrutiny that we put on ourselves. It's much harder than you. And I don't ever, like, if I go into something worried about the outcome and it being a negative outcome, that's no way to live, man. You can't live that way. I come to work and try to be the best steward I can be for this organization and for this city. That's what I try to do every day. That's it. And look, one day they're going to have a different GM. That's part of our league. I don't know when that'll happen, but I don't sit around thinking. I don't think about that.
Knowing that, how hard is it for you to grade yourself after 4 years and not going to the playoffs, saying I work my ass off, I do my best, but I've got to adjust somehow? How difficult is that?
It's not. I mean, I'm stubborn. I mean, I think y'all all know that. But I mean, I think we did in a lot of ways. We did, and I think that's all part of growth. I mean, like being able to really look internally and figure out, okay, what we're doing. There's a lot of really good things that are very valid, but also being able to sit back and say, okay, we need to do things a little bit differently. And, you know, those discussions and collaborations with our staff was good. And I think we did do some things a little differently than we have in the past.
What do you feel like?
Take a couple more.
Those might be obvious to you, but what do you feel like those are things you did do different?
Well, we were more aggressive in free agency than, well, I say, like, y'all say we never do. I mean, like, I disagree. I've always disagreed. I've told y'all that. I mean, like the year we signed Buckner and Rivers and, you know, I mean, so, but we were more aggressive at the onset of free agency. And I think the guys, the players we signed are going to really help us and be good, you know, be good Colts.
After years of, you know, being kind of on the hamster wheel of not making the playoffs, and you talk about having confidence in your process, what gives you that confidence, and why should other people have confidence in your process when I guess the end result hasn't been there the last 4 years?
Yeah. No, look, when you don't, anytime you don't make the playoffs, people are going to question what you do. But at the end of the day, you have to believe in something. Like we have to have, if we are vacillating on what everybody else says and thinks, then we really don't believe in anything. We don't. We have no belief in anything if we're not willing to believe in what we're doing. I do believe, look, I think we've drafted really well. I think we all, and done some, and not been perfect by any stretch. Not by any stretch. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I think we've done some good things. And I think we've done some good things with the team. But at the end of the day, the one position we all know, we have to get the quarterback settled. And, you know, get that position carries such an importance to just almost the state of your team when you've got that position solidified. He's one of 53, and it's not all about him, but he's an important piece.
Chris, how much has the last 2 years with Anthony, the injuries, kept you guys from being settled offensively, just in terms of learning him, being able to develop the identity? It feels like, you know, usually when there's a new quarterback, it takes like 6 games, and then you guys kind of figure something out. But it's been in and out so much. Has the coaching staff had a chance to really learn that?
I'm trying to get with what you're getting at here. I mean, like our offensive philosophy, it's going to change a little bit, you know, when Anthony's in the game. And I think Daniel and Anthony are similar in a lot of ways. Now, Gardner and Anthony were completely different. Flacco and Anthony were completely different. So I think you'll see more, you know, continuity, you know, and really all of our quarterbacks now. You know, they all, you know, have ability to do some things with their feet. So I think you'll see more, you know, of a similar offense with each guy. Now, you figure out what each one of them are really good at, and you try to do that. That's the one thing I always appreciated about Coach Reed in Kansas City is like whoever the quarterback was, man, he could fit it. And, you know, Shane can do the same thing. But now we have, you know, the group is they're different, but there's some similarities. So I think the offense will be able to carry over a little bit more.
Do you view this year as a make Why not? Considering that he's going into year 3, you do have the option coming up, that decision. But I guess why is your timeline perhaps different than one I might have perceived or at the outside world?
Do you think people regret Baker Mayfield's timeline? Sam Darnold's timeline? Let's just go.
Say they changed teams.
Exactly. And so, how about sometimes you got to have a little patience with a guy and let them grow through things. Now, there's got to be, like, if you just know this guy, no, he can't do it. But if you think, hey, he's on the right trajectory, why are you gonna flush him just because people outside think you should flush him? I don't agree with that. I think we need to give Anthony every chance to be the best he can be, and I think he can be really good. But things got to come together.
So, just to put a pin on that, how have the injuries complicated, trying to have that?
Oh, there's no question it's complicated. I mean, you miss, like, you just think about missing and I know the mental reps, yes, but it's physical reps, just practice reps, all that stuff. When you miss it, yeah, it does. It delays the timeline a little bit.
Chris, you talk about the poor end this season's, obviously the week 1 storyline is still there. When you think about both of those things, start, finishes, anything training camp wise you guys have done to try and change how you start and or finish seasons?
This will be a pretty physical training camp, okay? And Shane and I have had long talks about that. This game is still, look, toughness still wins. It does. And I think that, we're limited enough as it is without pads. And the NFL and I think football in general has done an unbelievable job taking the head out of the game. Okay, they're teaching much different than they did 10, 15 years ago. They've taken the head out of the game, but it's still a physical game, all right? And I think to be physical, you have to practice physical. You do. So I think you'll see a little switch there.
Talked about the
Let's do one more here.
With AR, what things have you seen, just trajectory-wise, to give you hope that he can figure it out, considering the injuries, the accuracy, the benching, things like that?
Yeah. Well, look, there was a 3-game run, 3 or 4 game run, after his benching when he came back, that was really good. I think we'd all agree that was a great stretch of football. And there's been stretches of accuracy that's been really good. The Jet game was, that's probably the best game he played in his career against a really good defense. The record didn't show it, but that team defensively was really good. And then what really gives me a lot of hope, so I don't know if you can think back to these moments, but at the end of the Pittsburgh game, people forget we had to get a first down there. He threw a pass to Pittman to get the first, to kind of get the clock down. In pressure moments, his ability to slow it down and make a play, he's shown it multiple times. You go back to his rookie year against the Rams. We're down, 23-0, brings us back to tie the game. The Jet game, to win it. He had to make throws to win it. New England, 4th down throw to get us within, the 2-point conversion. So there's been some signs in pressure moments that he can get things done. Now we just got to be able to do it all the time.
All right. Chris Ballard speaking here on Report Day, Grand Park out in Westfield for Colts camp. We will come back. We will break that down and a couple of things that caught my ear, and I'll get back to what I was talking about with Anthony Richardson. Big show lined up. Scott Agnes going to join us today, Stephen Holder as well. Your reactions as we get set here for another season of Colts camp and then into the Colts themselves and what you heard from Chris Ballard. All of it to unpack. We'll do it other side here, Query & Company, on a Tuesday on The Fan. Okay, I want to get fan reaction, listener reaction, I should say, fans of the Colts, to the Chris Ballard press conference. But I'll just say it. I listened to the 30 minutes of that, and I think that Chris Ballard, who at times I have accused of being pretty arrogant, sounds like a little bit more realistic Chris Ballard and a little bit more, a slightly more humble Chris Ballard. But at the same time, it's the same old song and dance, right? Same old story. I mean, rinse and repeat. We could have played that same press conference for the last 3 years. I like our guys. Competition's good. I want to see these guys get competitive in camp. The one thing that was different, there was one thing that was a little bit different. And admittedly, I don't know what exactly it is that I'm wanting him to say. You know, we don't know anything yet because they're just showing up for camp. But the areas where you expect him to stand by guys, he stood by them. But there's one thing to me that was a little bit different than with Chris Ballard. And it ties into what I was talking about just before we began that press conference, and in tying in with what I was talking about with Alexander Rossi and how it relates to Anthony Richardson. One thing that was different from Chris Ballard from what I heard, and I think for Colts fans, it's both good news and bad news. We'll get into it. I want your thoughts as well next. So when I was talking about at the top of the show with the Colts reporting to training camp, and then we heard from Chris Ballard. But just before we went out and Chris Ballard began speaking, I was talking about with Anthony Richardson and how there was a time when I would watch Alexander Rossi during qualifying sessions in IndyCar, and in a 10-minute session to get down, you have 10 minutes to do your best lap. And Rossi's best lap would always come at the very end of that session, and he would be completely out to lunch for the first 2 minutes and a little bit better in the middle 2 minutes, and then he'd come in and like pit, and then he'd come back out and he'd lay down a lap that was as good as anybody in the field. And I asked him once, I'm like, what is the difference? Are you getting better grip in your tires? Are you adjusting your car? And he said, no, what I do is at the beginning of a session, I begin on the outside of the track. And I drive the outer lane so that I can look to my left and see the inside lanes and where I can kind of shave time and where I can cut corners, basically. So I do the difficult part first. Then I narrow it down to the easy part. I figure out what can be weeded out to get it to the most finite level. And that's how I do the fastest lap at the end. And I think with Anthony Richardson, he's gotten the difficult part down. Running the football and extending plays, he can do. Throwing the 65-yard deep ball right into the breadbasket of a guy in motion, he can do. The problem for Anthony Richardson is on the shaving lanes and making things smaller and more simpler aspect, he hits the wall every time. His completion percentage in the routine plays, the layups, as Chris Ballard says, have not been there. You have to, as a quarterback, you have to start with the routine and then master the outside lanes, not start with the outside lanes and work your way back in like Alexander Rossi does or did. And that, to me, is the problem with Richardson. Now, when Chris Ballard just spoke, and we just listened to it for 30 minutes, and he talked about his, the fact that Jim Irsay is no longer there and how much they're going to miss him and how much belief he has in the daughters and how he knows them well. And I'm not saying any of that is to say that any of that is lip service. I mean, I'm being serious when I say I'm just repeating to you what he was saying. And I think that's all true. He talked about the fact the big news would be this, and that is that no one is going to start the season on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. The closest would have been Zaire Franklin, but Zaire Franklin, who had ankle surgery, he thinks is going to be good to go. He also said that, Jalen Carlisle, who they like a lot, is cleared. Samson Ekubon, who missed a lot of time last year, is cleared. So they look very healthy. Defensively, he thinks they need to be a better tackling defense. Every defense probably, I would think, feels that they need to be a better tackling defense. But one thing that Chris Ballard said to me that stood out, and it's good news and it's bad news. I think Chris Ballard, the thing that he does the best at his job is, I guess he and I have this in common. Chris Ballard can say a lot of words without saying anything. And he just did that for 30 minutes. Now, admittedly, I don't know to be fair, I don't know what it is that I would expect him to say. And he's usually pretty honest about things. And you look back and go, yeah, he pretty much said that. Maybe the most honest thing that he said, or the best insight that he had, and there's a level of truth to it, is when he cited Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield of, do you think those teams wish they would have given them a longer leash? And I think the point that was trying to be made to him was, yeah, but Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, they got second lease on life later because they got a change of scenery and a change of expectation and all of those things. But perhaps if they were still in that same situation, who knows if they're the same player, because they're just eventually The definition of insanity is trying the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. And with Anthony Richardson, I thought he showed with Anthony Richardson the willingness to continue to give him opportunity and the belief in Anthony Richardson. But for the very first time, to me, Chris Ballard, who a year ago at the end of the year said, we've got a long way to go, and he was a little more contrite. But usually at the beginning of the year, Chris Ballard is very confident. And I guess the good news is we're seeing like a little bit more realistic and humble Chris Ballard, and maybe that drives him. But the bad news is he didn't seem as confident. That, to me, sounded like a guy that was not as confident in his roster and where they are, and seems to be as incredulous and as confused as the rest of us as to what in the heck we're about to see. And while I applaud and commend and appreciate the transparency of that, it's also a little bit troubling if that's the guy that's running your franchise that he did not seem convinced. That did not seem to me to be a guy convinced that he had any idea whatsoever what direction this team was going. Just didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll let you hear a little more from him over the course of the show. Scott Agnes going to join us other side as well, as the Pacers Summer League and the WNBA both. Obviously, that confluence in the last couple of weeks. We'll catch up with Scott. We'll do it on the other side. Nice tune, Eddie. I'm a fan. By the way, Leonard Skinner, I've always said, every time this song plays, I bring this up. When you talk signature songs of a band, Leonard Skinner has one of the most highly contested debates, whether it's Free Bird or Sweet Home Alabama. I think it's probably Free Bird, personally. The other artist, Scott Agnes would be a good person to chime in because on this next one, right? Because I believe with this other artist, there are only two correct answers. And one of them is more about the song itself was bigger, and the other is about like the lyrics of the song in terms of a signature song. Now, do we have Scott Agnes in Fieldhouse Files? Okay, Scott's set to join us just a couple minutes, I believe. Fever back in action tonight, by the way, and Caitlin Clark's still not going to be on the floor as they're in New York to take on the Liberty. Eddie, I'll have you let me know when Scott's in the mix. So I'll ask you this, Eddie. So you know the definition of a signature song, right?
Yeah, like if you go on the street and you ask,
yeah, exactly.
Joe Schmo, like, hey, what is the first song that comes to mind when you think of, Van Halen or et cetera?
Correct. The artist that I think has the biggest debate other than Leonard Skinner for signature song is Madonna. What do you think is the signature song of Madonna? Little before your time, I realize. I mean, Madonna is not necessarily like in vogue. I'll ask Scott Agnes because he joins us now. Scott joins us, Fieldhouse Files. Scott, you are known and you are not afraid to admit you're a Swiftie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You jumped on that. Okay. So obviously what I'm talking about is an artist that is, a little more passé than, say, a Taylor Swift, but kind of Taylor Swift level hype and hysteria in her prime. In your opinion, Scott Agnes, tell me the signature song of Madonna.
Like a Virgin's the only one that stands out.
See, that is absolutely, in my opinion, it's here's what's interesting, okay? That is her signature song, probably, and the one that I think she is most known for musically speaking. But does Madonna's signature song and that debate get swayed by the fact, do you know her nickname, Madonna's?
No, I don't.
Her nickname is the Material Girl.
Oh, yeah, she's got that song.
Because of the song Material Girl. So does that sway signature song into material? Because when Madonna, and I'm not saying I hope this is anytime soon, but I always say the signature song is the song that is first mentioned in the artist's obituary, okay? Like, so-and-so, best known for their hit such and such. And with Madonna, Material Girl will be the first mention because I guarantee you either the headline or the first line will say, Madonna, the Material Girl who rocked the music world in the 1980s, da-da-da-da-da, passed away at the age of 91 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's one of those.
That's totally fair.
Okay.
And it's a lot better, an easier headline to lean into as well.
Correct.
The It Girl, the Material Girl, whatever.
That's exactly right. But Material Girl, not as big a song as Like a Virgin, obviously. All right. So let's get to this, Scott. Obviously, Fever in action tonight. We just talked about it. The All-Star game is complete. We'll get to that in a second. But Caitlin Clark's availability tonight, I think we can certainly say, is a no-go. Do we get a better timeline on when we might see Caitlin Clark's return?
No, not just yet, because she was planning to meet with an outside doctor from outside the state. And from there, then they would formulate the plan of what's next. My understanding is it's not as bad as some people had feared. I mean, I get there's a lot of outrage online, right? And people are, hang it up for the rest of the season. What? No. I think it's probably a couple of week type of thing. The bigger issue in all this is it's been one thing after the other. And so my personal worry is that, okay, you get one right, and then something else becomes the issue. So I think it's important for her to take whatever time is needed, and I think inevitably she will be back, but I don't think it won't be for the rest of this month, likely. But we do not have any firm timetable.
What specifically is the injury?
The latest one is the right groin. I assume it's a strain, and it happened in the second to last game. They were playing in Boston at TD Garden against the Connecticut Sun, and she just felt it. And I think you could see on her face so many emotions run through her head, probably like, goodness, can I not catch a break? Went down to the other end, banged her head on the stanchion. A teammate, a staff member, put a towel over her head, and I think it's been one thing after the next. It was that quad strain, like day 3 of practice and training camp. Most recently, previously, it was a left quad strain. Now it's to the other side.
So, okay, I've asked this before, I realize, and then we'll get to the rest of the roster. Could the injury be, like we have seen with other players, compensatory? In other words, could this be because she was compensating one area of her leg because of the other injuries that she has experienced?
I would suspect that's playing a factor here, right? Yeah, you generally, if something's acting up, you overcompensate by putting more pressure on your other leg or your other ankle or what have you. And so, if that left groin area is bad, you're probably leaning into that right a little bit more. I don't know the physics behind.
Did we lose Scott, Eddie?
Yeah, we did.
Would you like to continue what he was saying?
I just don't think we know the physics behind it.
Thank you. We don't know the physics behind that nor the science behind connection, right? Connectivity has been a weakness. Is that right?
That's true.
Fever in action again tonight. You'll be on the pregame call, right?
7:45 pregame coverage. Yes.
Do you feel that, and we've talked about this, it's maybe a tired subject, but I think it's one worth leaning into. At this point, I'll ask Scott because we've got him back. Scott, at this point with Caitlin Clark not in the lineup, do you think the rest of the supporting cast now has a pretty good idea as to how to play without her? And then as a result of that, how long because if you look at it, I mean, we're basically halfway through the season for the Fever. And let's say Caitlin Clark misses, we'll just say 3 more games, okay? So then when you get her back, what is the acclimation period of adjusting to the way that they have been playing without her, which for more than not has been very good and balanced, and then working her into that and having her be maybe more facilitator first, shooter second? How long does it take for all of that to find its cohesiveness before, you know what I mean, so that you're on the right page going into the postseason?
Yeah, the incredible thing is that they're 6th in the standings out of 13 and obviously have not played great basketball. And what I was wrapping up there was we have all seen how bad her shot has been. Well, if you're not feeling your legs, you can't you require all that power and such from your legs to power you up for those 3-point shots. But in terms of this team coming together, look, this team hasn't looked at all what we thought all offseason, right? Starting with your biggest acquisition in the offseason, DeWanna Bonner wanting out. And that threw a total change into what this Fever team was expecting. Now, Ari McDonald has been a huge acquisition. She was a free agent pickup here, that she was just open on the market here. And what she allows for this team to do is play at more of that pace and speed that they do when Caitlin is out. And so there was such a big drop-off in the playing styles when Caitlin was out, but now Ari's been able to pick that up. And I think while all along Stephanie White has wanted to play Caitlin Clark a little bit more off the ball to preserve her energy, to preserve what she can do throughout the season, and I think that was smart coming into the season because, look, she hasn't made it healthy through this year, through the physical contact and all of that. We all know this team is at its best when she has the ball in her hand and is able to facilitate. So I think they'll try to ease her back in probably once again on that minutes restriction that she doesn't like but deals with, 25 to 30 minutes or so, ramp her way up. And then you hope this team is able to take off in that final month of the season. The challenge here, Jake, is that there's been no all-star break, especially for the Indiana girls, because they were the hosts, basically. And we saw them all out and about over this last long weekend. And so they got right back to practice on Sunday and now are the featured game coming up tonight in New York once again.
Scott, let me go back to when the Super Bowl was in Indianapolis, okay? And I was walking around downtown, and first off, it was so bizarre because it was like 62 degrees or something the Saturday night before the Super Bowl. But I'm walking around downtown, and I remember an SUV went past, and Adam Sandler was in the back seat, and everybody was going crazy, and the Hampton Inn had turned into like the Bud Light Hotel for the weekend, and
yeah.
And I'm seeing literally, I mean, I don't know, a couple of 100,000 people walking around just the quadrant of downtown. And in that moment, I literally stopped and just looked around and was like, I can't believe that the Super Bowl is here and like that I'm witnessing all this. I mean, in a good way, right? Give me the moment for the and I'm not comparing the WNBA All-Star Game to the Super Bowl. That would be foolish. But for this franchise and for this city, I mean, it was a big event. It was cool. Was there a moment where you just kind of stopped and looked around and said to yourself, like, this is cool. This is a big deal, and I'm not talking about just watching the game itself. Was there something that happened over the weekend where you thought to yourself, this is a unique event, it's cool that it's here?
Yeah, great point. Absolutely. I took time Saturday to walk around and experience the downtown. And my goodness, it was blown up in the best way possible. Even better, I thought, than last year with NBA All-Star Week. And I thought that was you didn't know it at the time, but that was basically a trial run then for what we just experienced. And I thought Nike and Gatorade in particular going all in with their banners just made it feel massive. And then to me, Jake, it was going into the
Yes. Eddie, what are you doing over there? What are you doing over there, Eddie? You keep stepping on wires? Are you stepping on wires? Is that what we're doing?
I don't know. I mean, we've had some network issues here.
Some
He's back
connectivity
again.
issues, right?
We got him back again.
I don't know
your
what it
works,
is.
Scott.
Usually, Jake, that's only when I'm on my iPhone. I'm in the home studio, so I have no idea what that is. But to my point, it was going into the convention center where I was told in the first 2 hours on Saturday, there were more people than there were the previous day, the entire day. It was filled with player appearances. I love the players' buy-in to the weekend. And I think the other telling part to me, more about the league as well, Jake, was so many of the different companies and activations going on. They're only doing that if there's interest. And the interest, to me, was through the roof. We know what kind of fans fill the arena now for games and for Friday night, to your point earlier. So to me, it was walking around Saturday and just seeing the massive amount of groups and events going on. I thought Georgia Street was fantastic, and I thought Indy did a great job crushing it.
You know, it was cool, and I will say that, just the signage and the overall vibe, and then you have obviously summer celebration that was taking place. I mean, it was the perfect marriage of, just people having a good time in downtown Indy, and it was good to see Indianapolis, which at a time that Indy probably needed it, right, for downtown Indianapolis to be able to show out a little bit, which was, obviously very cool. Scott, in terms of Fieldhouse Files, give me the other that you are working on or the upcoming stories that you might have coming to Fieldhouse Files.
Yeah, well, we have Pascal Siakam, obviously, in the Brickyard 400, driving the pace car, so I got to write about that. And then Tyrese Halliburton talked today for the first time about his injury and was on for more than an hour with Pat. So we'll be passing along what he had to say. And one of those big things was that Kevin Durant
Scott,
was in town here.
We'll talk to Scott Agnes later on. Appreciate it. Let's get back into what the Colts were talking about. I'm not real interested in having somebody come on here and talk about something that's taking place against us while we're on the air. So we'll just move along with that. Chris Ballard spoke earlier today, and I want to get back into that, Eddie, because we've got, he talked about a number of different things. And one of those is, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. And with Richardson, again, I go back to, I think Richardson, there is so much that is in play with his shoulder and whether or not, and I think Chris Ballard even knows that he's kind of tiptoeing it is the wrong way of saying it, but he's got to know that you can only go so many times with Anthony Richardson in going to letting him go, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And listen, there is a talent within Richardson that is so intriguing that I understand why you keep going back to it. And it's like I've said with the Pacers with Jonathan Bender. The reason why Jonathan Bender, that the Pacers extended him and gave him so many opportunities is because they saw so many times, like in practice and things like that, the intrigue of something that was almost unforeseen. And I think they see that within Anthony Richardson. But as he talked about towards the end of today, the stretches of good play from Anthony Richardson, they have been there, but they need to be there more consistently. Chris Ballard earlier today on the consistency of Anthony Richardson.
There was a 3 or 4 game run, after his benching when he came back, that was really good. I think we'd all agree that was a great stretch of football. And there's been stretches of accuracy that's been really good. The Jet game was That's probably the best game he played in his career against a really good defense. I mean, the record didn't show it, but that team defensively was really good. And then what really gives me a lot of hope, so I don't know if you can think back to these moments, but at the end of the Pittsburgh game, people forget we had to get a first down there. He threw a pass to Pittman to get the first to kind of get the clock down. In pressure moments, his ability to slow it down and make a play, he's shown it multiple times. You go back to his rookie year against the Rams. We're down, 23-0, brings us back to tie the game. The Jet game, to win it. He had to make throws to win it. New England, fourth down throw to get us within, the 2-point conversion. So there's been some signs in pressure moments that he can get things done. Now we just got to be able to do it all the time.
See, he's right. He's right in that, right? And the fact that you've got to get it consistently now, right? But yet there is still the belief and the hope. And we've talked before, Eddie, about hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things. But at the same time, it can be dangerous. The question was asked with Anthony Richardson, and it's a fair one. Now that you have Daniel Jones in there, is there still the belief? Is there still the hope? Chris Ballard on whether or not, and in fact, the reasoning for still believing in Anthony Richardson.
Do you think people regret Baker Mayfield's timeline, Sam Darnold's timeline? Let's just go. Exactly. And so how about sometimes you got to have a little patience with a guy and let them grow through things. Now, there's got to be, if you just know this guy, no, he can't do it. But if you think, hey, he's on the right trajectory, why are you gonna flush him just because people outside think you should flush him? I don't agree with that. I think we need to give Anthony every chance to be the best he can be. And I think he can be really good, but things got to come together.
I think what I heard today from Chris Ballard, and Eddie, you tell me if you agree or disagree, but I heard a general manager that, and in his defense, to be fair, if Chris Ballard came up there today and spouted till the cows came home that he loves this roster, he is confident that they are going to compete for an AFC South title, and that they are exactly where they need to be, and he is thrilled with it, we would come on here and torch him and say he's delusional, he's arrogant, and I would sit here, and John probably would as well, sit here and go on and on about why in the world are we trusting this guy, and why is he getting year 15 or whatever it's been. But to be fair to him, if he comes on and he's a little more contrite, and he's a little more humble, and he's a little more realistic as to where they are, then we sit here and say, why are they not better than they are? Why does he not have a better belief? So there's a little bit of a double-edged sword there, in all honesty. But he did to me today, Eddie, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, he did sound like a guy who is just a little more humbled, but at the same time a little bit more in the dark about where his team is than he claimed to be the last 2 years.
Felt like he was flustered about where things are at, especially with the comment that he made about missing the playoffs last 4 years now. It just feels like he's searching for answers just like the rest of us, Jake, and he's frustrated with losing, and he's flustered with the fact that he can't seem to figure it out in terms of building the roster around to win, even like Pittsburgh. The Steelers somehow always win, even though they don't have great quarterback play. He just seems frustrated with that aspect of not being able to find wins, even though the quarterback play may not be there week to week, game to game.
The other thing when he was asked about it, like Daniel Jones, it sounded to me like when he was asked about Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones is a guy that he brought in, right? And he was complimentary of him. Let's hear what he had to say about Daniel Jones, and then there's something coming off of that I want to add on to. Here's Chris Ballard earlier today on Daniel Jones.
Good dude, really good guy. Centered. He's been through a lot. Daniel's been like he's seen, and being in New York and the scrutiny on being a top 10 pick is not for everybody. But I thought he handled it with grace and class like you would expect, and that's who he is. And Daniel's talented. I mean, Daniel's a very talented player, so it'll be a fun competition to watch between these two guys. They're both very talented.
Now, he seemed to me, though, to be more, and I know that he knows Anthony Richardson better, Eddie, but Chris Ballard seemed to me to be a guy that still was leaning more towards promoting Richardson or building up Richardson than Jones. But what's fascinating to me, and I'm going to go back to this. What's that?
I have a thought on that.
Okay, go ahead, because I'll tell you what fascinates me.
Do you think the reason why he's building up Richardson is just because, like us and other people that have talked about the competition, they've dragged through the mud already saying, hey, this is over, Daniel Jones can be the week 1 starter? You think that's part of it?
No, I think it's this.
Or I was going to say, or the aspect of, hey, this is the guy they drafted to become.
That's it. I still think it's this. I go back to when Jim Irsay held the famous press conference and said with Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano that these two guys are attached at the hip. And we later found out they were not. He detached them. But what I think Chris Ballard knows, whether he wants to admit it or not, whether he's aware of it or not, the bottom line is that in the eyes of the fan base, in the eyes of a lot of the national media and maybe the local media as well, but certainly in the eyes, I think, of the people signing his paycheck, Chris Ballard is attached to Anthony Richardson. I realize Chris Ballard also brought in Daniel Jones. But Chris Ballard, by kicking the can down the road and going Band-Aid at quarterback for a number of years, and albeit, I get it. The luck thing was not his fault. I get it. Okay? But when you knew that Andrew Luck was not coming back and that went on about its way, then you had to go out and eventually get your new franchise quarterback. And Carson Wentz was attempt number 1, and yes, that might have been attached to Frank Reich. But then, when it came down to it, when your owner was saying, look, we've got to get a young quarterback in there, and you had 4 to choose from. Bryce Young, in no particular order. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. So I guess the order in which they were selected. Yes, it is true that they would have had to have moved up or moved around in order to get, like, if it was Young or Stroud. But that possibility was in the mix. And they were happy with Anthony Richardson. And I understand why. There's a lot of intriguing pieces and unusual pieces about him. But Anthony Richardson is who, when Chris Ballard in his ultimate test was put to the test of what player is the one that you are going to go after as a franchise player, then in that situation, he chose Anthony Richardson. And so he has to know that his branding in terms of his judgment of selection is most attached to Anthony Richardson. So he is going to ride that until the very last drop when the fuel light is on to make sure, and I understand it, I'm not damning him for it, he is going to make absolutely certain that he gets every opportunity possible for that to happen. And therefore, I think he is going to, and now, what's fascinating to me is the other side of that, which I think could be something to watch and play out. And I talk about precedent. There might be a precedent towards something that we're going to see. And I'll explain what I'm talking about next. Stephen Holder, by the way, top of the hour. See, I think it's got to be this, right? In terms of signature song, but Madonna's nickname is, like, if you Google the Material Girl, I think Madonna's the first thing that comes up, right?
Here, let me look it up. The Material Girl. Yeah.
But Material Girls, I think Material Girl is actually the better song, but oh, that was Material Girl right there. I'm sorry. But Like a Virgin is the one that I think is her bigger, like, the more recognized hit, right? Material Girl's a cool song, though.
I agree with you.
So tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, everything gets underway. Colts practice. We will be out there. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're out there, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a line yet on what players we'll be getting? Because I assume that we'll be talking to players out there, correct?
Not sure who just yet, Jake. But yeah, you're out there the rest of the week after today. You'll be out there Monday and Tuesday. So you'll next be in studio with me on Wednesday. So I know you're going to dearly miss me because it'll be a whole entire week without seeing this.
Yeah.
And being around this awesome person that I am.
That's okay. I noticed you're wearing your Anthony Richardson shirt today.
I was just wearing my Colts shirt. It just happened to have Richardson on the back. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's good, right? I just, listen, that Jets game, I think you just always go back to it, don't you?
The Jets game, the New England game where, it's a gotta-have-it drive. You got to go down and score a touchdown and whatever it was, like 16 plays. You convert 3 different fourth downs.
Was it Richardson or Flacco that was in Tennessee when they got the huge play to Alec Pierce? That was Flacco, wasn't it?
That was Flacco, yeah. And then the touchdown to Pittman in overtime to win it.
Yeah.
That was Flacco, yeah.
I get why they're intrigued by it. I do. I totally understand it. But at the same time, how long do you give it? And I think one of the things that's going to be interesting as well, and Chris Ballard led off today by talking about the close relationship, and I think it's valid. With Jim Irsay's daughters, that they've been around, and he has been a part of that, and he's had regular conversation with them, and because this is not like I mentioned this yesterday, Eddie. I think we all hear about this. You seen the movie Tommy Boy, right?
No.
You never seen Tommy Boy?
I have not.
Do you like Farley?
Like Chris Farley?
Yeah.
Sure. I've only seen a couple of things of his and not a ton.
So Tommy Boy, basically he's like the guy that's away at college for 7 years and, wild party animal, etc. And then,
so he's you.
With the exception of the party part.
Sure.
And then he basically inherits his dad's company. And I think that they're with any business, and I'm saying this totally exclusive of the Irsay daughters, but in any business, whether it be an architecture firm or a pro sports franchise, whenever the person who has been the long-standing owner passes away, and then the second generation, or in this case the third generation, takes over, there is the assumption of, they got the phone call while they were living like in Aspen as a trust fund kid, or traveling, following the dead, going up and down the coastlines of the West Coast for Dead and Company, enjoying that and living off the millions, and now all of a sudden they're being called back to run the family business. There's a stereotype of that. There's an assumption of that by a lot of people. I don't think that is clearly that's not the case here. I mean, we know that because they have been around. And I think it was important for Chris Ballard, for himself, to point that out. I don't think he was trying to necessarily kiss up to the owner type thing or kiss the ring. I think he was simply wanting to point out, hey, these are, Carly Irsay Gordon in particular, or Carly Irsay Gordon. She has been around a lot. She's been on the sidelines. She's been wearing the headsets. And as I mentioned yesterday, I think that it would be very easy, and it has been for the last couple of years, for people to be like, why is the Jim Irsay's daughter walking around wearing headsets and carrying a clipboard? And people wanted to roll their eyes at that previously, but now you look at it and say, I'm kind of glad that's the way it is, right? Because what is going to be taking place that she is now in charge of, that she has not herself observed. I commend it. And I think that's simply what he was trying to say. Hey, listen, the reality is that this is how, this is somebody that I have familiarity with and somebody that, due to that familiarity, I'm comfortable with the relationship here because there is not we all have had this where you get the new boss, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, but sometimes you get a new boss and everybody's like, what do you think? I mean, what are you hearing? Like, are they going to bring in their own people? And everybody gets all nervous. Then you got to meet the new boss. You got to find out, you got to feel them out. And then everybody's asking, so what do you think of the new boss? Have you heard? And I think Chris Ballard is wanting to let people know, look, new boss is a lot like the old boss in the fact that been around, not that overly new and familiar, and basically just promoted from within, essentially is the easiest way to look at it. But as the Colts get ready to get into the swing of things, as they get set to return to the practice field tomorrow at 10 a.m., there's something that I wonder about, and I'm very curious. I need the pulse of the Colts fan base here. I need audience participation on this because I have a survey question for the masses.
Another good survey question, Jake, that could go along with yours maybe. Is Chris Ballard's voice white noise at this point?
Yes. I mean, you're correct. Like, yes. Is it the same thing that's falling on deaf ears now, right? Because it's kind of the same. Do they need a new voice to get you invigorated? But there's something else that happened that makes me wonder if white noise is a very good way of saying it, if it doesn't feel like you're on a treadmill. So I need audience participation so that I can get the pulse of the Colts nation to make sure we're doing this right. And then I have an idea of what people are feeling before I go to Grand Park tomorrow. 239-1070 is the telephone number for that. I will let you know what it is I'm thinking about and that I worry about next. because I have a legitimate question that I'm curious about, and I thought about it last night and today. And it's going to sound like I'm trying to create some sort of divisiveness. I'm not. I'm usually, I'm all-encompassing type thing. But here is my Colts question for the masses. This is, for the most part, and we've been lucky in this town because we really have not had long periods of complete void of excitement from a sports standpoint. Usually between the two major sports franchises in town, one of the two is playing at a very high level if the other is not. For a long time, when the Colts were finding their footing in the NFL, the Pacers were rising and were really good. Then the Pacers had a long period of mediocrity, at which point the Colts were at their zenith. And then for a while there, they were both clicking at a very high rate. And then obviously it became, especially coming off of the Manning era and then into Luck. I mean, this, without question, was an NFL Colts town. This had transferred to, and I don't know that it was ever first and foremost an NBA town, but it was certainly a basketball town. Maybe collegiately more than by the way, that cluster truck you got smells fabulous. What did you get exactly, Eddie?
Korean barbecue salmon, Jake.
That's been your go-to, right?
I've had it twice now in the last 3 weeks. I had the quesadilla last week.
What body of water in Korea do you think they find that salmon? Are there a lot of streams in Korea?
No, Jake. It's the barbecue sauce is a Korean barbecue sauce. The salmon is the salmon.
The salmon. No, it's a barbecued Korean salmon, right?
It's salmon with
barbecue
Korean
sauce.
barbecue.
So where in Korea?
Peppers and onions.
So where in Korea are they getting the barbecue
cilantro?
Sauce? Is that north or south?
Looks like there's pepper and salt and some jasmine rice. Very good stuff.
All right. So here's my question. Now that the Pacers did what they did and got within a whisker of an NBA title, okay? Does that in any way, shape, or form alter the enthusiasm that fans have for the Colts season? I'm not saying that it's shifted, and I'm not trying to create divide. There is somewhat of, I think, a rivalry between the franchises locally, at least competition for the headlines. And I know that they support one another, and I know that Jim Irsay, his final tweet was about the Pacers playing the Knicks, and I get all that. And I know that everybody wants both franchises to do well. But does your excitement for the Colts season get tempered in any way, shape, or form, or altered in any way, shape, or form because of the high that you're coming off of for the Pacers and how close the Pacers were to a title, and then the reality of knowing how far the Colts theoretically are away? Because from the Pacers standpoint, they made it to the top of the mountain and then instantly, they let go of the tow rope and slid back down to, Camp Base 2, and you know that it's going to be a while before they get back up there, but nonetheless, they were there, and it was magical. But it's a reminder, and it makes you instantly realize how far away the Colts might be. And then it reinforces or it recreates the reality in your mind of man, look how far it is to go. Because seemingly they're in a division that is there for the taking. I mean, I know Houston is, we think, going to be good, but are they? We don't know how good, And I'm just curious if the season seems to have wind taken out of its sails because of the recency bias of how good the Pacers were. Did it almost make the Colts, did it de-emphasize the excitement? I think for a long time, the Colts camp and the Colts getting back on the playing field, we were super stoked about it because it had been, oftentimes 3 to 4 months before we've seen pro sports in this town, and that was, say, a first-round exit or a miss of the playoffs by the Pacers. Now, there's so much interest and intrigue about the Pacers. Has that taken away from what today is of report day.
Like people are dreading the start of the Colts season because they have low expectations.
Yeah, dreading's probably the wrong word, but yes, to an extent, right? Does it feel like an even more arduous task because you're like, oh man, in other words, when you think about the injury, and then you really stop and you're like, oh my gosh, they were so close, and think about everything that had to happen.
You're talking about Tyrese's injury?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're like, and they were so close. And to be that close and then realize, and it takes like 3 or 4 revisits in your mind to reinforce and realize that their timeline was thrown off that much. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, so the Pacers got to kind of pick up the pieces and then move forward. And then you compare that to the Colts and you're like, wait a minute, they were never even there to begin with. And they've kind of been doing, Eddie, I think you made a very good point there. The white noise of, like, in all honesty, the Chris Ballard press conference today.
Same old bleep, different year.
If we pulled up the recording of that from 2019, would it have been, how different would it have been? The names would have been different. But would the company line have been different? It would have been like the same old thing, right? And so does it feel like, because we finally saw breakthrough progress on one side of downtown, does it feel like you're stuck in the mud with the other one?
I mean, the players certainly should be in the mindset of, hey, look what this city did for the Pacers and how they backed them and surrounded them and supported them. Like, if they're willing to do that for them, they can certainly do that for us. Like,
fair.
We've got to, we got to get our bleep together for the fans and for the city.
Okay, let me ask you this question. I asked somebody this earlier. In your kitchen right now, Eddie, I want you to envision your kitchen, okay?
I'm envisioning. Heck, I can pull it up right now if you'd like.
How many?
We've got a camera in there.
How many kitchen drawers do you have? 5?
6.
Okay, 6. Okay, now
I think
the far left. You open that up. You got utensils in one of them, right? Your
that's my far right.
Okay, far right. The next to that one. Okay, you open that up. What's in there? Maybe an oven mitt or 2.
Next to that one. Yeah.
Okay, then give me the third. What's in a third one?
I think we've got the container lids.
Okay.
I'm very organized, Jake.
Okay, then the fourth, what do you have?
That would be the containers.
Okay. And then fifth, if we're last or second.
Storage bags, like plastic bags, that type of stuff.
Now here's where I'm getting with this, okay? Then you get to number 6. When you open that drawer, and it probably squeaks, half the time it doesn't open because something is like higher up than it needs to be, and you open it up and you look in that drawer, and it's got 2 Sharpies.
It's the junk drawer.
A tape measure, a roll of tape, some random Band-Aid, and like a phone charger from a phone you had 3 generations ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like eclectic crap thrown in there. And it feels like in the NFL.
Eclectic crap. Nice.
The NFL, that's what the AFC South is, right?
Eclectic crap.
The AFC South is the junk drawer of the NFL, right?
Yeah.
To the rest of the league, you open it up and you're like, this is his Jaguar. And then the Texans, they're like an expansion, but they're kind of not. They've been around a while, but they can't get it in the right direction. And then the Titans, I don't know what they're doing. And then there's the Colts. And yet with that division, with in being in the junk drawer division, nobody in that division, when they win the division and gets into the playoffs, none of them do anything. I mean, the Titans went randomly to an AFC title game with Ryan Tannehill. Cool. The Jaguars randomly went to an AFC title game with Blake Bortles. Cool. Outside of that, each of them get their turn at the rotation. They get picked out of the crowd, and the price is right to come down and spin the big wheel. And they spin it, and they get on 95 cents, and instead of taking that, they spin it again, and they hit 95 cents again. Done. Drew Carey's like, thanks for playing. You're gone. Right? Every time. And yet with that, every other team in the division has won the division twice since Indianapolis last won it. Is there a feeling for the fan base of what are we doing here? I'm going to squeeze in Jeff real quick before we get to Stephen Holder. Jeff, what's up?
Hey, how you doing? I wanted to solve your all-star game conundrum, and it's really simple. And It's simply go back to East versus West and predominantly the fan vote.
Now, hold on. All-Star game now, and I don't mean to be rude here, Jeff. What's that?
NBA and WNBA,
Okay.
even Major League Baseball. You can throw it in there too.
When were we? And I'm not saying we didn't because I'm old. When were we having the debate on this?
Well, you talked about how the All-Star game is a bunch of gimmicks and just there's no skin in the game, and I think we should put skin in the game, and that skin being you go East versus West, mostly fan votes. And then whoever wins the All-Star game gets home court advantage for the finals.
Didn't they do that? Major League Baseball did that, right?
I don't know. I don't follow baseball as much as basketball, but
Major League Baseball did do that, Jeff. They did it for what, Eddie? Probably a handful of years, and then they did away with it. It's funny, Jeff, because I don't disagree with you. But when the Major League Baseball All-Star game did it, of course, it was in the middle. It's in the middle of the season, like the NBA is.
Exactly.
At that time, people liked it, and then I can't remember what there was some team one year that didn't have as much representation in the All-Star game, and then they got robbed of home court or home field advantage despite being the far better team. I get it, right? I totally get it.
But if you look at the NBA and the WNBA, most of the players on that court have skin in the game. They all think they're going to make the playoffs, and you would have a competitive game. You would have defense. You would have something skin in the game, and that would bring back fan interest and make things a lot more interesting.
Listen, certainly, I don't disagree with you, Jeff. Certainly on the men's side of things in the NBA too, the lack of defense is, it's just, it's nothing but and it's an unbelievable display of athleticism for like 5 minutes, and then after that, it's just like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? You believe it or not, and it's crazy to think that like a guy doing a bounce pass from 94 feet away to a guy that is swooping in from 20 feet all via the air that's doing 2 cartwheels in the air and then dunking it gets tiresome, but it does after you've seen it like 5 times. Stephen Holder was out at Grand Park in Westfield. Joins us next. Going to find out what's going on out at Grand Park with Stephen Holder, who joins us and has surrendered his personal life as he knows it for the next 4 months. Joins us now on the guest line. I can hear are you at the Masters? It sounds like you're at Augusta Nationals. I hear birdies chirping. It sounds very peaceful, Stephen.
Oh, no, not even close. I wish. But Westville's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
So you're
It's not
still
quite
at Grand Park, is that right?
Just left, just around the corner. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's begin with this. From a health standpoint, and obviously I'm going from afar because I got in here right as things were kind of getting both, settled in from report day and then Chris Ballard speaking. But from what I was able to tell, there were no reports of significant injury or missed time, although Zaire Franklin is going to be a spectator for a while. Anything else that I missed?
No, that's the encouraging thing I'd say. Anthony Richardson, first off, is obviously the big one. As I said or wrote last week or indicated, he's good to go according to Chris Ballard. There may be some restriction on him in terms of how many throws. They're going to chart his throws so that they don't have any setbacks there, but they don't have any concerns according to their evaluation, so that's good. Zaire Franklin is the one I think to watch. He had an off-season ankle surgery, and he's still not cleared to practice. But Chris Ballard said it won't be very long, so we will see how that goes and see if that proves to be true. Otherwise, they're pretty good. They're in good shape, and no one's going to go on the PUP list. They won't have any of those, and they normally have at least a couple. They won't have that this year. Samson Ebucom at defensive end, he missed last season, as you know, with the Achilles tear. He's cleared, so they feel good about that as well. So, yeah, that's the good news on day one.
Stephen, Chris Ballard spent about 30 minutes answering questions, talking with the media. Admittedly, and I go back and forth on this, Stephen. I think he's in a tough spot to an extent in terms of not that it's his goal to satisfy media or fans, but if he comes out and says, look, I'm thrilled about our roster. I think we're going to be great. I'm ready for the year. We're going to be competitive. We're going to be tough. Then everybody's going to go, what is this guy talking about? He says the same thing every year. And yet he comes out and I thought was a little more humble, a little more realistic than in years past. And so then we want to torch him for saying he knows his team isn't very good. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Your interpretation of, I guess, the mood and the approach from Chris Ballard versus years past was what?
Well, first of all, I think the thing to point out is I said you're fair. I think the thing to point out is I think he knows, and I would agree with this, I think he believes, Chris Ballard, that they have a good roster top to bottom. I think that's been true for quite some time. Better this year than last year. I thought last year he left too many holes on defense. But generally speaking, they have a strong roster, and they have for quite some time. The problem is they just can't get it together at quarterback. Well, what distinguishes your team from the next NFL? It's the freaking quarterback, right? So now, that is a tough thing to navigate when you're asked, well, why aren't you guys winning more? Well, the answer, you want to be honest and say, well, because we sucked at quarterback. But that also oversimplifies it, and it sounds like you're trying to dodge responsibility when you say that, right? So he is in a tough spot sometimes. There's no question about that. I think he understands that, and he's very perceptive. Chris Ballard, he gets it. Like, he understands optics. He knows how to read a room, all of those things. He's very smart. So he is very careful in what he says. I would say, in terms of the difference between this year and then the past, I think that not a ton of difference, except to say I think that there was more attention paid by him and his players today to the fact that they haven't been in the postseason for too long. He even said, this is the longest in my career I've gone without being in the playoffs and anywhere he's worked, as a GM or not. I'm talking about throughout his career, even as a scout. So it's very top of mind for him. And like, even if he doesn't talk about it all the time, it's hitting him in the face every single day, and I think he understands that. And I thought he shed a little bit of light on that with that comment. So that was interesting, and I thought notable.
You know, when you look at the Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones situation, I thought he spent more time Chris Ballard did, and maybe it's because it's the guy he knows more, so to speak, and he brought in both. Yeah. But I thought he was asked more about Richardson. I get that, but he seemed to go far much more in detail about expectation and et cetera of Anthony Richardson than Daniel Jones. But you were there. Am I misinterpreting what I heard?
No, I think that's fair. And I would also add he was asked far more questions about Anthony Richardson because I do think that that's where the questions exist, right? I mean, can Anthony Richardson figure this out and hold on to his job? Daniel Jones, while there are questions about how it's going to go with him, I think it's more – I think people have an expectation in their mind of how he'll perform and what he'll be. And with Anthony Richardson, it's a little more wide open, I guess, you know? So the questions were certainly more geared toward Anthony Richardson, no question about that. And so the feedback was as well. I would also say, though, he certainly is – I think you could argue Chris Ballard's more invested in Anthony Richardson, frankly. They all are. I mean, if Daniel Jones comes in and wins the job and plays sort of like just okay, they've not accomplished anything, right? If Anthony Richardson wins the job and plays at a decent level, that actually is something to hang your hat on because that's progress, right? So I just think there's an understanding, certainly by Chris Ballard, whose job as GM is to look at the big picture. There's an understanding that, like, if they're going to figure out the quarterback situation, Anthony Richardson having a good season could be a step toward that, right? So anyway, I just imagine that's kind of some of the thoughts that kind of go through his head and are informing his answers, you know?
Stephen, I was asking this earlier, and I want your thought on it. Does the success of the Pacers in any way take away wind out of the sails of the Colts season? Because it's, in other words, we see one team in town that was at the top of the mountain and the whole city falls in love with it. And everybody loves the Colts too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that. But then the contrast, because it's in such an immediacy, because we're coming right off of it, does it make it difficult, do you think, for the fan base to push all in this early, knowing how far away the franchise may be based on what they just saw? Did we lose Stephen, Eddie? Okay, Stephen, I don't know how much of that you got, by the way, when I was asking about does the success of the Pacers in any way, and I know people that love the Pacers love the Colts. I mean, I get it, right? But does having the recency of a team at the highest level make it difficult for a fan base, do you think, to completely buy in right now to the training camp of the Colts?
Well, first off, by the way, it turns out if you hit the red button on the screen, the call disconnects. It's amazing. I didn't know that. So that was my fault on the disconnection. Anyway, as it relates to the Pacers, it's an interesting question. I would say this, though. The first thing I'd say is that watching that Pacers run and being there for some of it and experiencing it and watching how the city embraced them, it was a reminder for me, as someone who covers football, it was a reminder for me just how long it's been since the Colts provided any of that. Okay? It's been a long time. And that's just a really hard thing to swallow if you're a Colts fan. You know, you invest a lot of emotion, a lot of time, a lot of money in a lot of cases into that team. And to not get anything out of it, those feelings that you go searching for as a fan, that's a hard thing to swallow. So I guess that's where I come down on it. It's just like, you want a return on investment for what you put into it as a fan. And I'm not even talking about money. Even if you never buy a ticket, you're still investing your heart and your emotions in that team, you know, because you give something of yourself to support your favorite team. And you've got nothing to show for it if you're a Colts fan in a very long time. That's a tough thing, man. That's a very tough thing. So I just think that the Pacers offered a reminder of what it's like to get a payoff for that. And if you're a Colts fan, you're wondering, well, where's the payoff for me? So that's what I say about it.
How far off do you think they are?
Well, I think they are a team in the AFC that is kind of middle of the pack, and the question on whether they can go further than that is a quarterback question, right? And the quarterback has to elevate the team beyond what it currently is, and in any team, right? I mean, if you take the top quarterbacks off of their teams, then what kind of team are they? What are the Buffalo Bills if you take Josh Allen off and replace him with Daniel Jones? Well, they're just probably a middle-of-the-pack team, and I think that's just where they are. And so when you ask me where do they stand and what are their, what is the end game for the Colts, I think they're a team that's in the middle of the pack. You can't go 500 anymore because of the unbalanced schedule at 17 games, but they're essentially a 500 team that can be more depending on the quarterback.
But Steven, it just feels so. I mean, they're in I mentioned it earlier. They're in a division that's basically the junk drawer of the NFL, right?
Yeah. It's not good enough. Look, I'm not saying it's good enough. It's not. But that's what they are. They're a 500 team, roughly a 500 team that could be better if they had better quarterback play. But the odds of them having that elevated quarterback play, they aren't good, right? Because neither quarterback has done that. Neither of the two quarterbacks they have done that. So where does that leave them? That leaves them 8-9, 9-8, and sitting at home in January, and that's not good enough.
Stephen Holder is our guest, ESPN.com, where you can read his work, and of course you'll see him on ESPN as well. All right, tomorrow 10 o'clock, everything gets underway. How long, Stephen, into the camp do we go before we start really taking a hyper look at exactly who's getting the most snaps at quarterback?
Oh, tomorrow. I mean, well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. We are going to be looking at every indicator, and to that end, Chris Ballard said today, he says everything matters. Every rep, every practice, every game snap, every preseason game snap. He was very clear. It all matters, and it will all factor into the decision. So I will take my cues from the general manager and pay attention to all of those things.
How much of it comes into, Stephen? How much will factor in just on, for example, if they invested a first-round pick in Tyler Warren, and we know he's going to be, or expected he's going to be a very good player right away. Let's say Anthony Richardson is hitting A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pearson's stride on every play, but he can't hit Tyler Warren in the intermediary to save his life. How much of who it is that he is able to help or hurt goes into the factor in the decision, if you will? If Daniel Jones, for example, is spoon-feeding Tyler Warren on the regular but can't go over 24 yards with accuracy. You see what I'm saying there? Like, is there one player that they go, but we need to prioritize this guy in involvement?
I don't think that'll be a basis for the decision. No, I would say no. But I do think the scenario you pointed out, or the scenario you painted, is not out of the question. You know, how they evaluate all that, we will see. But I do think that's a reality when you have two quarterbacks that are different. The one thing I'd say, Chris Ballard did make this statement, and I tend to agree. He said their quarterbacks this season are a little more similar than in the past. So, for example, last year you had Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. They have nothing in common, okay, in terms of stylistically. They don't have anything in common. I think if you go back to Anthony and Gardner Minshew, for example, right, what do they have in common? Practically nothing, right? So this year, while I know we don't think of Daniel Jones in that way, he is a guy who can use his legs and use his athleticism, get out of the pocket, can do quarterback runs. So they have some commonalities this year. So maybe it'll be less so when it comes to the disparity between how they play. But I do think they are different in terms of explosiveness. There's no question about that. And Daniel Jones has not been that guy in his career.
All right, tomorrow, 10 until 11 o'clock, practice underway. We will be out there live tomorrow, by the way, from 12 until 3. Stephen Holder will have it all covered as well, as will, obviously, the morning guys, Kevin and James, be out there as well. Stephen, appreciate it, as always, all right? Enjoy the by the way, is it really hot outside? Is it going to be? It's going to be hot tomorrow, right? Plenty of liquids?
Today was nice. Today was nice, but it's going to be burning up later this week. So
Okay.
welcome.
Okay. Well, I got that to look forward to. All right, Stephen, appreciate it.
All right, see you guys.
Stephen Holder joining us on the program. By the way, I'll address this just because everybody is asking about it now, okay? About Scott Agneson earlier. And I'll address it. Maybe I shouldn't, but I will. I like Scott Agnes. I've known Scott Agnes since he was in high school, and you know, he obviously attended the same high school as I, went through the same programs as I. We have a lot of common threads for sure. I mean, I like Scott a great deal. I have no ill will on Scott Agnes at all. And I respect greatly the work that he does and the grinding that he does after working for the Athletic and the Pacers both, and now doing his own thing with Fieldhouse Files. And when people go out on their own, as he has done with that website, I have a tremendous respect for that, and have always felt that it, you know, it's kind of the duty, I guess, to try to promote those things, because people like local. They like, you know, they like to buy local. They like to shop local. And I have a great deal of respect for the work that he does, and I think he does a very, very good job in covering the Pacers. And certainly when it comes to the Fever, I don't know that anybody knows it or covers it better than Scott, without question. I also have an understanding and respect for, and look, I've known Pat McAfee since he was a rookie. As a matter of fact, when I worked with Derek Schultz, we had to do, it's pretty funny, when Derek and I think it was our first year on the radio when we were doing the Query and Schultz program, and right before we started like in August, and that September, the Colts season got underway, and the sales department over there had sold for us to do a weekly 2-hour Colts show from the casino up in Anderson, which is, I mean, awesome, right? And we're like, that's awesome. But getting players to commit to, on their off day, coming to Anderson to then do a 2-hour radio show is a big enough challenge. But that was the year that Peyton Manning got hurt, and they did Kerry Collins for like 2 or 3 games, and then turned it over to Dan Orlovsky and Curtis Painter and, you know, the whole Josh Freeman and whatever else. And I think they started 0-12, something like that. So then getting players for that, good luck, right? I mean, like, no player wanted to talk about anything. And Derek and I both were like, you know, the punter guy is really funny. And we ended up doing, I think it was the final 6 or 8 weeks with McAfee, and have been friends ever since. I mean, I get along with McAfee a great deal. I don't see him as much, but when we were at WNDE and he was launching his podcast thing, he was recording all of that from inside the Bob and Tom studios. So I saw him almost daily, and would see him every year annually at a party that takes place just before the holidays, and occasionally still text with him. And when I see him, I'm always on good terms with McAfee. I've always liked Pat, and we've always gotten along well. I have nothing against Pat personally in any way, shape, or form, and am most impressed and, you know, continue to be amazed at the empire that he has built, and total credit to him, no question. And he's a massive entertainer, and he's incredibly plugged in and informed. However, professionally speaking, while I don't in any way, shape, or form pretend that this Little Dog and Pony show competes with that level of power, the reality is that within this local market, we are making, just like Pat McAfee is, a pie and asking people to come and take a slice of it. And we are on at the exact same time. So while I understand that in today's era of people going back and listening in podcast forums to things, and, you know, a lot of people don't watch or ingest things live, but nonetheless, when we are on the radio, this is still one format that is primarily served to and ingested in a live format, notably people in a car or at a workplace on a computer. So in that capacity, while I understand and respect that Pat McAfee has very engaging and interesting guests and content, I also am under the understanding that that is happening during the time that we, as the only of the shows in this radio station, are up against that, and that is an option for people to go to aside from listening to this one. And I'm most grateful for those that choose to listen to this radio show each day and our local programming. And I understand that a lot of what McAfee's show is doing is speaking on a national platform, talking about the Bills or the UFC or the Washington Nationals, whatever it might be. But nonetheless, it is still each day my responsibility to try to make sure that people are listening to this radio station and this program, even though I have no ill will towards any of those people and get along with all of them. I mean, we're all in this group and this what we do. There's only so many of us in the hopper, right? And even though McAfee is on a national stage, he's locally based. So we still intermix and see each other, on a regular, as well as Agnes. A couple of months ago or so, at some point when Scott was on, he made reference to something that was taking place in that moment over on ESPN. And so I messaged Scott and just said, hey, listen, I think you'll understand this, but if you could do me the favor, when we do have you on, try not to mention something that is counter-programming us. That's what it is. It's counter-programming. That is an option for people elsewhere. And he said, hey, I totally get it. I apologize, whatever. And I mentioned it to him one other time. So today when I had him on, and yes, I was well aware of the fact that Tyrese Halliburton was on speaking for the first time since his injury with Pat, live against counter-programming what we're doing. Again, on the global scale, are they comparative? Of course not. But locally speaking, to an extent, it is. I have to compete for every person that I can get. So I thought about messaging Scott and just saying, hey, I'm aware that Tyrese was on with McAfee. Just, please, if you will, don't mention it. But I have mentioned that on numerous occasions before. So when, as I always feel it is important and respectful and professional to do, oftentimes, I didn't do it with Steven there, but I usually do this, especially if it's somebody that is doing something on their own, building their own brand. Literally every time that Scott comes on, I usually say, what are you working on with Fieldhouse Files? When Bob Kravitz comes on, I will say, what sort of things are upcoming at bobkravitz.com? Because I want to give them the opportunity to promote their work. So when I threw it to Scott to promote his work, I took exception to the fact that in that moment, he mentioned what was counter-programming exactly what we were doing. Because if I was listening to that, my first reaction would have been, oh gosh, I want to hear what Halliburton has to say. And go away from what I'm listening to, which I totally understand and respect that people would do. I totally understand that. Totally respect it. So I just didn't feel that it was prudent, considering it's something that on more than one occasion I requested not be done as a fair trade-off for me promoting what he's doing. That's all. And if people took exception to the way I handled it, that's fine. When you're in this job sometimes, and we are paid to be able to handle the arrows that fly past us, and more often than not, I'm pretty proud of the way I do it. And in that one, I probably would do it the same again if it happens again. So I apologize if it bothered you. We'll get back into the Colts camp and let you hear a couple of things that Chris Ballard had to say. We'll do it on the other side. I guess it is fitting that Ozzy Osbourne's final show would have been that tribute with Black Sabbath. And one of the most prolific entertainers and performers of his era passing away today at the age of 76. Ozzy Osbourne, of course, the lead for Black Sabbath, and a career that I'm sure John will absolutely take a look back on as well. And it's interesting to me because Ozzy Osbourne is one of those that certainly at his apex, and maybe part of this is an age bias because of the age that I was when Black Sabbath, for example, was at its peak and Ozzy was transitioning into a solo career. But Ozzy Osbourne was one that almost became, a caricature to an extent of, the hardcore heavy metal musician. And obviously the famous story of biting the head off the, some say bat, bird, whatever, whichever it may have been. His arrest at the Alamo in San Antonio, the drunken debauchery, it goes without saying. And then the undercurrent of the subliminal messaging within the lyrics of his music and etc. If you were from the outside, I mean, and not necessarily like a diehard fan in that moment of that band. And then I think the thing for a lot of people, and perhaps myself included, that really relaunched him is the wrong word because he was never out of the pop cultural mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. But Ozzy Osbourne, I think, reinventing to an extent from bad boy musician to lovable, and you had empathy towards family man that was trying to recapture what his almost recklessness of his younger years had nearly cost him. And by that I mean his family life, certainly his marriage, and his health. If you look at the reality show of Ozzy Osbourne, which was fabulous, and just seeing the daily life of not only Ozzy Osbourne, but his relationship with Sharon Osbourne, who defines patience and forgiveness and grace throughout their relationship, that with his children. And then you saw, I guess, because you finally saw behind the curtain, you indeed saw the almost caricature nature of him on stage. And I think that created an awareness for all of us about the fact that sometimes you just, despite what you think, you don't always know people. You think you do, but you don't always know people and what they're truly like. And he went from somebody that I think was just larger than life to suddenly one that we actually kind of could all relate to. And, Parkinson's is ultimately what Ozzy Osbourne fell victim to. But, you want to talk about a life lived fast. And when he went into solo, that song that you just heard, Mama, I'm Coming Home, and then, Road to Nowhere, he had, I think in his solo career into the early 90s, kind of a softer side of him came out, and that parlayed into a softer side that we saw as well. But I know for a lot of people that were fans of that, I can tell you, Shannon P. Walsh being the queen of it all is the biggest Ozzy Osbourne Aquanet headbanger of them all. And there are a lot of people that will mourn the passing of one of rock's true lead legendary frontman in Ozzy Osbourne. We'll come back. We'll hand it off to John, but I did want to play you a couple of Chris Ballard clips as well on the other side. So Chris Ballard, I almost said Kevin Ballard. Chris Ballard talked today out at Colts camp and addressed a number of different things, notably talking about Anthony Richardson, the quarterback position. Again, if you're just joining us, he did not mention anybody. He said that nobody was going to start out on the PUP list. Zaire Franklin was a possibility after ankle surgery, but Zaire Franklin is good to go. He did have the following to say about the Colts in terms of what has become, unfortunately, the norm, and that is missing the playoffs. Chris Ballard on that subject.
Yeah, it sucks, man. I mean, first time in my career I've ever gone 4 years without making. I mean, no, it's a bothersome thing, especially with the expectations we have here in Indy. I mean, that's the one thing with Jim that I always appreciated, man. Like he don't want to be average. He wants to be great, and that's Carly and I. I mean, look, we spent a lot of time together because she's around us so much. But I mean, she always said, "Look, I don't want to be good. I want to be great." And that's always the goal going in. And 22 was 22. The 23 season, last game of the year, we're right there. And even last year at the end, we didn't play as good as I thought we should have, but we were still kind of in the mix. And then you go back to 21, and we're in the driver's seat, and we piss it down our legs. We have got to finish better. Like that, at the end of the day, we have to finish the seasons better because we've had some really good football teams that just haven't got it done.
So some of that does sound familiar, but then the other question for Chris Ballard would be this, and that is just how close then are they to making the playoffs?
I think we've got a good football team. How good we become will play out over time. Like, we got to go to work. I mean, it's always about there's not a magic pill that you can take. There's nothing. There's not a magic wand. You got to go to work. The one thing you love about the NFL is you got to earn the right to win, and it takes a lot of hard work and takes a group being connected and coming together. That's what's great about training camp. So kind of day by day, we'll go to work and we'll see if we can reach what we think we can be.
I just think, Eddie, you said it best. You summarized it best when you said, is it becoming white noise? I don't dislike Chris Ballard, but at the same time, I think I speak for a lot of people in saying at some point you've got to start seeing the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
exactly.
It does feel like it's just the same. Doesn't it feel like you could play clips from last year or 3 years ago or 5 years ago and it would be the same thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just the whole thing of we're close, we're not close, it sucks, I got to do a better job. I mean, just for example, when he talks about the defense and he's like, we got to be better tacklers. I mean, that's like saying our point guards need to be better passers. You know what I mean? I mean, things like that. I think the thing that becomes frustrating and frustrates the fan base is the fact that a lot of what the Colts apologize for is oftentimes what it is that we have been trying to point out for a long time. And so when you point something out and you're told, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. I know better than you. I know better than you. And then it's, you know what? Actually, it's this. And you're like, wait a minute. That's kind of what I said. Eventually, I think that wears out with people. But again, new season, clean slate, right?
Are we? Oh, I gotta bring it back, Jake.
What's that?
I gotta have it on I need to get it on our hockey page.
Our hockey page?
Hotkey page over there.
Hotkey page.
That's where the breaking news sounder, your awful analogy, your brain drops. And of course, my personal favorite.
What are you people? On dope?
By the way, this from Paul the Mailman, who I saw at Bare Naked Ladies. Not a strip club, at the concert. 62, 69, and 1. He can't hide anymore. But we've been saying that for a while, though, right?
But hey, is it this time of the year where we need to have this on the ready at all times?
Yes. We got to clean some things up, right?
That's exactly right.
Shane Steichen's favorite phrase, got to clean it up, baby. Got to clean it up.
And then later in the year, it'll be like, we got to work that out. So we had the jackhammer.
That's right.
Well, that one will have to work itself out.
I'm telling you, over the course of the year, I'm curious to see how long people's patience, goes.
I'd have to go back and listen to that, but we got to, look,
Chris Ballard, we all have our catchphrases, our
quirks?
No.
Crutch words, phrases?
Our crutch phrases.
Yeah.
That we rely on too much. We all do. I mean, I do as well.
Fillers.
I have it when I broadcast races, car links, that kind of thing. I mean, we all have it. But Chris Ballard's absolutely is look.
Yeah.
Look, we got it, da-da-da. Look, we got it, da-da-da. Always. You know what I mean? Like, virtually every answer he gives is that. Eddie, you were named after Eddie Van Halen, correct?
Yes, I was.
So does that mean that your parents were fans of that genre? In other words, are your parents, for example, fans of Ozzy Osbourne?
I think so. I think my dad certainly. I'm not so sure on my mom if she was or is or not. So,
what about Three Dog Night? Because we have tickets to give away for Three Dog Night at the Hoosier Lottery Free Stage at the Indiana State Fair, taking place on August the 1st. August the 1st, we will give them away to caller number 5, since Anthony Richardson was the topic today. Caller number 5, jersey number 5, 239-1070. If you would like to go see Three Dog Night at the Hoosier Lottery Free Stage, we have a 4-pack of tickets to give away for the Indiana State Fair, August 1st. JMV is in. John, can I imagine?
I'm doing the JMV takeover from the State Fair in the tap room over there.
Is it going to be all Ozzy Osbourne?
This weekend probably will be a lot now. I'm sure a big Sky Point. That's significant in music history right there.
Huge.
He's the creator of heavy metal, is he not?
Huge. Yeah.
Did it not start with him?
Yeah. I mean, And here's what's interesting, John, and you tell me, you might disagree with me on this, but I was just saying, like when Ozzy Osbourne was at his apex with Black Sabbath,
yeah,
it was and I don't even know what you would, satanic is the wrong word, right? But like a cult. It was like this music of the occult.
I was scared of Ozzy when I was little.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
When I was little, I was like scared of it, right? It was like, oh my gosh.
I didn't want to look at the Bark of the Moon.
That is
cover.
exactly correct.
Like, oh my God, this is scary.
That is exactly correct. And then, certainly in the early 90s with Road to Nowhere, and I think Sharon Osbourne gets a lot of credit here, but he morphed into, in his solo career and then into the reality show, a very likable, almost sympathetic figure, right?
Oh, I mean, it is, in a way, we have seen both Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube morph into something that they did not at all start out being in our minds.
Right. That's exactly correct.
I mean, and that's just, I think, with maturity and age, right? And also with opportunity to make money.
We have one of those two things, right?
So maturity and age. I'm not morphing into anything. I'm still 12 years old. But no, it's a significant deal. What's your favorite Ozzy song?
I love, actually, Mama, I'm Coming Home is my favorite. Yeah, I think it's a great song.
Yeah. Bark at the Moon, Crazy Train, Shot in the Dark.
What did you play the other? You just
No
played
More
one.
Tears.
No More Tears is a great one. You played a Black Sabbath song on the takeover this
Paranoid.
weekend, I think. Because Shannon says, and I quote, we're in the car, and she goes, this is it right here. This is Ozzy's the best. Ozzy is the absolute best. And so I said, well, I got a videotape and sent it to John.
Yeah.
And she says, no, my hair doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So she's worried that her hair didn't look good enough for you.
His most, at least with being popular on the charts, he and Lita Ford.
Yeah.
That song, Close Your Eyes Forever, is probably the most popular. Mama, I'm Coming Home is probably up there too, but I'm sure that duet with Lita Ford is probably on the top of the list.
Mama, I'm Coming Home, if I'm not mistaken, was about him returning to Sharon Osbourne in like good faith, right? And in good standing with her.
Mr. Crowley, great song.
He's got a lot, man.
Biting the head off a bat.
So
that was Des Moines, Iowa, was it not? Back in
and didn't he
81?
There have been a lot of conflicting stories on that, but allegedly didn't he?
He thought it was rubber or something.
Correct. He didn't realize it was real.
He did not
right?
know it was a real bat until he had decapitated it with his teeth.
Brutal. Surely he would have had to have gotten like rabies shots and stuff, right?
I would have to think that that's really not hygienic. At all.
Not a good situation.
Laura Steele is going to join me today at 4:30, and because we're going to talk a little bit about obviously Brickyard this weekend and her stuff at Bullseye with the Colts, but she is a rock music person around here. A little bit about Ozzy with Laura, a mutual friend of ours.
What else is on the big show, John?
I think Greg
Laura,
Rakestraw. I think Mark Vandermeer. I think Mike Duraco, and we should go Go from there. When are you
All right.
out at Colts camp? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
What do you got in the bag here from Cluster Truck? What's that?
Cheese quesadilla.
Nice.
It's fabulous.
I'll get back on the salmon
Fabulous.
track.
There you go. That's what
I'm
Eddie had.
going off the rails on the salmon track.
I had the Korean barbecue salmon. Exquisite.
You have what?
Exquisite, he says.
The Korean barbecue salmon.
Oh, do you?
Exquisite, yeah.
Korean barbecue salmon.
It's
Eddie, we give
salmon
the
that's
tickets
got
away?
the Korean barbecue sauce. Yeah. We did.
2?
Caught up on yesterday, too, Jake, because we didn't give them away. Kevin and Robert.
Kevin and Robert, you're on your way. 3 Dog Night. John's up next. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow, I think, if you're listening to Aquarium Company.